My wealthy husband's family manufactured evidence of an affair I never had. Now I have 6 days to prove a negative, or lose my daughter to the people who framed me. The photos look real. Tiernan leaving my house at 11 p.m., my hand on his arm at a cafe, an embrace that never happened. The texts are mine, cropped. I can't stop thinking about yesterday. I was talking about tile samples. They removed the next sentence. The witness statement is signed. Their housekeeper paid $50,000 to say she saw us together. In the bedroom, he was measuring for closets. Every surface in this house, the marble, the door frames, the light fixtures, he built them. 8 months of evidence that I was never alone. The lawyer left me with a deadline and a choice. Sign away custody of my daughter, or fight evidence I can't disprove. I had 6 days to prove I didn't love a man. And the only person who believed me was him. Welcome to American Billionaire Tales. The door closed behind Duncan Firth with the soft click of wealth. The kind of sound that doesn't slam, just ends. I stood in the living room I'd spent 7 years making into a home. The folder trembled in my hands. My name is on every piece of evidence. Saoirse Brennan Ashcroft, the woman accused of loving a man she never touched. I sat down at the kitchen island, the marble Tiernan chose, the brass fixtures he approved, and spread the evidence across the counter like an autopsy. The photographs first. Tiernan leaving my house at 11:47 p.m. Real. He was finishing a late installation on the master closet. Hollis wasn't home. Hollis is never home. My hand on his arm at a cafe. Real. I was showing him a scratch on the table surface, the same wood we'd ordered for the dining room. Context removed, intimacy manufactured. The embrace. I studied it. Something was wrong. The lighting on his face didn't match the light on mine. The shadows fell in different directions. His shoulder met my arm at an angle that felt constructed. They stitched us together from pieces of the truth. Then the texts. I recognized my own words immediately, my own voice weaponized. I can't stop thinking about yesterday. I remember writing that. I was talking about the herringbone floor samples, the way the light caught them in the afternoon. The next sentence read, "Can we get more options in the walnut tone?" They removed it. I need to see you. About a plumbing emergency. The pipes burst while Hollis was in Singapore. My husband doesn't know. That I'd approved the over-budget light fixtures. That was the secret. Brass instead of nickel. $1,200 I didn't want to explain. $1,200. And they turned it into an affair. The witness statement was last. Oksana Petrov, the housekeeper who's worked for the Ashcrofts for 15 years. She claims she saw us together in the bedroom on multiple occasions. He was measuring for closet built-ins. I was pointing at the wall. But on paper, it looks like confession. I looked around the room, at every surface Tiernan built, every fixture he chose, every door frame his hands had touched. 8 months of renovation. 8 months of a man in my home while my husband was everywhere else. The evidence isn't forged. That's what makes it genius. 80% of it is real, just reframed. The truth rearranged into a lie. I had 2 choices. Sign the relinquishment, walk away with nothing, lose custody of Willa, or fight evidence that looks true, because most of it is. I needed a lawyer, someone who fights dirty enough to match them. And I needed to warn him. The man whose face was stitched onto a lie. I called him from the kitchen, stood at the counter he'd designed, staring at the door frame he'd built. and told him that our professional relationship was destroying both our lives. Saoirse? His voice was immediate, concerned. We have a problem. I told him everything. The folder, the photos, the texts, the witness statement, the 6-day deadline, the morality clause, the custody threat. Silence on the line. Then, I never touched you. His voice was low, dangerous. They're lying. You know I never. I know. Then we fight it. I'll testify. I'll prove. Tiernan. I cut him off. The smart move. The necessary move. I need you to stay away from me until this is over. Silence. Long enough that I heard him breathing. What? Every moment we spend together is evidence. You in my house at 11 p.m., that's already a photograph. If they see us now, talking, meeting, anything, so they frame us for something we didn't do, and then we prove their point. By never seeing each other. That's exactly what they want. I know. 3 weeks ago, the last day of the renovation. I brought him coffee in the morning. He was finishing the final touch, a brass handle on the master closet he'd built by hand. The light came through the window at that angle that makes everything golden. He took the cup. Our fingers touched. A moment too long. Not an accident, not deliberate, just a pause. Neither of us spoke. Neither of us moved away. Then he cleared his throat and said something about the hardware finish, and I said something about the paint color, and we never mentioned it again. Nothing happened, but the silence remembered. Saoirse. His voice pulled me back. I'm not leaving you alone in this. You have to. They're accusing me of loving you. The least I can do is not abandon you while they do it. I should have argued. I should have insisted. Instead, I said the words I'd rehearsed. I'm terminating your contract effective immediately. Don't call me. Don't come to the house. If anyone asks, we haven't spoken since the renovation ended. Silence. Is that what you want? It's what has to happen. I hung up before he could respond. Before I could hear whether he'd argue or accept. Before I could change my mind. I stared at the phone in my hand. At the call log that now showed his name. Evidence, if anyone looked. The right move for the case. The wrong move for everything else. And already I regretted it. Vivian Cabrera's office was everything the Ashcroft mansion wasn't. Small, cluttered, earned. She sat across from me with the evidence folder spread between us, reading glasses pushed up on her thick dark hair, gold hoop earrings catching the afternoon light, berry lipstick, power suit in emerald green, the uniform of a woman who'd fought her way into rooms that didn't want her. Tell me about the texts first, she said. Rapid fire, no preamble. I told her. Tile samples, plumbing emergencies, light fixture budgets, every innocent sentence they'd amputated. She nodded, making notes. We subpoena the full records from your carrier. That's the easy part. And the hard part? She slid the embrace photograph across the desk, tapped Tiernan's face with one manicured nail. This. Look at the lighting. She leaned forward, pointing. His face is illuminated from the upper left. See the shadow on his jaw? But your face, the light's coming from the right. Lower angle, different source. I stared at the photo. I'd looked at it for an hour this morning. I hadn't seen it. They composited him onto another image, she continued. Took his face from one photo, your body from another, stitched them together. Amateur work if you know what to look for. Professional enough to fool a casual eye. Can you prove it? I know a forensics expert, Liesel Brandt. She can analyze the metadata, the pixel inconsistencies, the EXIF data. Vivian sat back. But that takes time. How long? 72 hours minimum. Longer if we wanted to hold up in court. My stomach dropped. The The custody hearing is in 6 days. I know. She didn't flinch. And your prenuptial agreement has a morality clause with a 7-year sunset. When's your anniversary? December 24th. 12 days. Vivian whistled low. So they have to prove you cheated before the anniversary, or your settlement becomes irrevocable, and they can't touch it. That's why they're moving now. Billionaire families don't act without strategy. Every deadline is calculated, every pressure point exploited. The witness statement. I pushed it toward her. Oksana Petrov. She's worked for the family for 15 years. Vivian read it with that same forensic calm, then looked up. She's claiming she saw you in the bedroom with him, on multiple occasions. He was measuring for closet built-ins, and she conveniently interpreted that as an affair. Vivian's eyebrow rose, the skeptical arch I'd later learned to recognize. Any chance she was paid? How would we prove that? Bank records. If she received an unusual deposit from an Ashcroft-connected account in the past 2 weeks, she made another note. That's a court order. Takes time. Everything took time. Time I didn't have. Vivian, I leaned forward, is this case winnable? She looked at me for a long moment. The fluorescent lights hummed. You didn't cheat on your husband. Not a question, a statement. No. Then yes, it's winnable. She closed the folder. But we're fighting on their timeline, with their resources, against evidence designed to look true. It's going to hurt, and it's going to cost you. I thought of Willa, 7 years old, at school right now drawing pictures, not knowing any of this existed. Whatever it costs. I moved out of the Ashcroft house that evening. The apartment was small, rented, furnished in things that didn't match. A gray couch I didn't choose, a kitchen table with 2 chairs instead of 12. Willa's room barely fit her bed and a dresser. But it was mine. The first space in 7 years that didn't have the Ashcroft name on the deed. I worked until my eyes burned. Vivian's notes, the timeline, the subpoena requests, the list of witnesses who might contradict Oksana, the gaps in the evidence that might mean something if we had time. We didn't have time. At 2 a.m., the doorbell rang. My hand stopped on the document. The Ashcrofts wouldn't ring. They'd send lawyers or police. I checked the peephole. Tiernan Vega stood in the hallway, holding takeout. I told you to stay away. He didn't move. Dark brown hair pushed back from his forehead. Brown eyes, steady. The burn scar on his left forearm visible below his pushed-up Henley sleeves. He looked like he hadn't slept either. I heard you. And yet. I brought food. He lifted the bag slightly. You haven't eaten since this morning. I know because you never eat when you're stressed. And you've been stressed since... He stopped himself. Just take the food, Saoirse. I should have sent him away, and that would have been the safest thing. Instead, I stepped aside and let him in. He didn't talk, didn't touch me, didn't sit next to me on the couch. He sat on the opposite end, as far as the furniture allowed, and ate in silence while I worked. Occasionally, he refilled my water glass. Once he handed me a napkin when sauce dripped on a legal document. That was all. An hour passed, then 2. At 4 a.m., I looked up from the papers. Why are you doing this? He didn't look away. The stubble on his jaw had thickened. The small scar on his upper lip caught the lamplight. Because you shouldn't be alone. I waited for more. An explanation, a confession, something that would make this make sense. He just went back to his food. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't about optics or evidence or even fighting back. This was a man who saw a woman alone in a storm and refused to let her face it without someone in the room. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't strategic. It was just presence. The thing Hollis had stopped offering years ago. He left before dawn, cleaned up the takeout containers, said nothing about when or if he'd come back. At the door, he paused. "They're accusing me of loving you." His voice was low. "The least I can do is act like it matters whether you survive this." The door closed behind him. I stood in the silence of my rented apartment, surrounded by evidence of an affair I never had, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Seen. And I couldn't tell if that was the beginning of something, or the proof they'd been waiting for. The phone rang at 7 a.m. I hadn't slept. The dawn light had turned to full morning, and I was still on the couch where Tiernan had left me, evidence spread across every surface. Vivian's name on the screen. "I found something." No preamble. That was her way. "I was searching prenuptial agreement filings connected to the Ashcroft family, looking for precedent, and I found one. 9 years ago, different wife, different brother, same morality clause, same accusations, same outcome." I sat up. "What do you mean, same outcome?" "Her name was Delphine Marchetti. She was married to Hollis's older brother, accused of infidelity 6 weeks before their 7th anniversary." Vivian's voice was flat, professional, but underneath it something cold. "Same playbook, same evidence structure, same timing." "What happened to her?" "She fought for 2 years. Lost everything. Took the settlement in the end, but by then, there was nothing left to enjoy it with." I stared at the documents in front of me, the photographs, the texts, the witness statement. All of it suddenly looked different. Not personal. Not about me. Protocol. They've done this before. "At least once, maybe more. I'm still looking." A pause. "Saoirse, this isn't about whether your marriage survives. This is about the family protecting assets. The morality clause isn't moral. It's financial. And they have a system for invoking it." I thought of Philippa Ashcroft, my mother-in-law, the way she'd smiled at our wedding, the way she'd smiled at Willa's christening, the way she'd looked at me across every holiday table for 7 years, like I was temporary, like she was just waiting. "I need to find her. Delphine Marchetti." "I thought you might say that." I heard papers rustling. "I have an address. She lives about 2 hours from the city. Changed her name back, keeps a low profile." "Can you send it?" "Already in your inbox." Another pause. "But Saoirse, she lost. She fought them, and she lost. There's no guarantee she'll want to help you fight them again." I looked around my rented apartment, the mismatched furniture, the evidence of a life dismantled in one morning. The coffee cup Tiernan had left on the table. Maybe she won't help me fight. But maybe she can tell me how they win. I had a name, a pattern, and a choice. Track down the ghost of what I might become, or fight blind against a system designed to destroy women like me. By noon, I was in my car, 2 hours north, looking for a woman who'd survived the same war I was just beginning. The address led to a modest apartment building 2 hours north, 3rd floor, no elevator, the kind of place where wealth goes to disappear. I'd changed before leaving, dark jeans, a gray wool coat, flat boots, nothing that screamed Ashcroft money, nothing that would remind her of what she'd lost. The woman who opened the door didn't match the wedding photos I'd found online. Delphine Marchetti, at 33, had been luminous, glossy chestnut hair, bright hazel eyes, a smile that trusted the camera. The woman before me, at 42, looked like someone had slowly dimmed the lights. Light brown hair going gray at the temples, thin, too thin. An oversized oatmeal sweater that hung on her frame like she'd forgotten how to take up space. And her eyes, hazel green and downturned, eyes that expected nothing from the door. "I don't know you." Her voice was faded, careful. "My name is Saoirse Brennan. I'm married to Hollis Ashcroft." The door started to close. "Please," I put my hand on the frame. "They're doing the same thing to me. The morality clause, the manufactured evidence, the custody threat. I need to know what happened." She stared at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, she stepped aside. Her apartment was small, clean but sparse. IKEA furniture, a thin gold cross on a chain around her neck, the only jewelry I could see. She'd sold everything else, I realized. Or they'd taken it. "You won't win." She said it while making tea. Not cruel, just factual. "I fought for 2 years. Lost my friends, lost my health, lost my sense of who I was." She set a cup in front of me. Her hands trembled slightly. "In the end, I took the settlement anyway. Just with nothing left." "What was the evidence against you?" "Photos, texts, a witness." She almost smiled. "Sound familiar? Was any of it real?" "Enough of it. They don't forge everything. Just reframe." She wrapped her hands around her mug. "My tennis instructor. We had coffee once. Once. They made it look like an affair." The pattern. The same playbook. 80% real, 20% constructed. "Delphine," I leaned forward, "what did fighting cost you?" She was quiet for a long time. The afternoon light through her small window made everything gray. Then she extended her left arm, pushed up the sleeve of her sweater. A scar. Thin, faded, about 2 inches long, across her wrist. She didn't explain. She didn't have to. "Take the money, Saoirse." Her voice cracked slightly. "While you still have something left." I looked at the scar, at her too thin frame, at the modest apartment where a woman who'd married into billions now counted every dollar. This was my future if I lost. This was the ghost of what I might become. "I have a daughter," I said. "They want custody." Her expression changed. She knew. "Then God help you." She stood, moving to the window. "Because they always get what they want." I left with nothing I'd hoped for. No testimony, no ally, no strategy. Just a warning. And a scar that would follow me home. The invitation came the next morning. Philippa Ashcroft requesting a meeting. Woman to woman. Her words, her territory. I wore armor. A tailored navy sheath dress, low heels, minimal makeup. The uniform of a woman who wasn't broken yet. The charity luncheon was held at a private club, the kind with waiting lists measured in decades. Philippa had a room reserved, just us. 200 years of privilege watching from the oil portraits on the walls. She was already seated when I arrived, silver white hair in a perfect chin-length bob, steel blue eyes, a cream Chanel jacket with navy piping, pearl necklace, pearl earrings, the armor of old money, soft on the surface, impenetrable underneath. "Saoirse," she gestured to, the chair across from her. "Thank you for coming." I sat, waited. "I want to offer you a solution." She folded her hands on the table, perfect manicure, the Ashcroft diamond glinting. "This has all become so unpleasant for everyone. You manufactured evidence that I had an affair. Unpleasant seems mild. A flicker in those steel eyes, then the mask smoothed again. I'm prepared to offer you double your prenuptial settlement, generous terms, enough to rebuild comfortably." Her pause told me what was coming. "And in exchange?" "You sign a custody arrangement. Willa remains with the family. You'll have visitation, of course. Summers, holidays. She picked up her water glass, sipped. It's more than you deserve. The words hit like ice water. You don't want the money. My voice came out steadier than I felt. You want my daughter. Philippa set down the glass. For just a moment, something human crossed her face. Something that almost looked like genuine care. She's an Ashcroft, Saoirse, my granddaughter. She deserves to be raised by people who understand what that means. She leaned forward slightly. I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting my son. You stopped loving him years ago. We both know it. I thought about denying it, but what was the point? That doesn't make your evidence real. It doesn't matter if it's real. Her voice hardened. It only matters what a judge believes, and judges believe documentation. I'm not giving you my daughter. Then you'll lose her anyway. She stood, smoothing her jacket. And you'll have nothing. No settlement, no custody, no dignity. She paused at the door. They always lose, Saoirse, the ones who fight us. Every single one. She left me sitting alone in a room full of dead men's portraits. The silverware gleamed. The flowers were perfect. Everything was beautiful and merciless. I looked down at my hands, at the wedding ring I was still wearing. Billionaire. Families don't negotiate. They execute. And I'd just learned I wasn't fighting for my marriage or my money. I was fighting for my child. Aldous Ashcroft took lunch at the same club every Thursday. Private room, same table for 40 years. I waited for him outside, intercepting him before he could disappear behind doors that had never been opened to women. He was 68 but looked older, silver gray hair thinning, pale blue watery eyes, the soft body of a man who'd never worked with his hands. He wore a navy cashmere blazer and a signet ring on his right pinky, the patriarch, the silent power behind the Ashcroft name. Mr. Ashcroft. He turned, looked at me with the mild confusion of a man who rarely encountered unscheduled events. Saoirse. Not warm, not cold, just acknowledging. I need to speak with you about what Philippa is doing. His expression didn't change. I'm afraid I'm expected inside. She's framing me for an affair I never had. I stepped closer. She paid a witness. She doctored photographs. She's threatening to take my daughter. Aldous adjusted his blazer cuff, unhurried, unbothered. I'm aware of the situation. And you're doing nothing? He met my eyes then, those pale, watery blue eyes that had watched 3 generations of Ashcroft women handle difficult things while he counted the returns. I trust Philippa's judgment in family matters. She's destroying my life. She's protecting our son. He glanced toward the club doors. My wife does what she thinks is best for the family. Even when what she's doing is illegal? He didn't deny it, didn't engage. Just looked at me with the same expression he probably wore reading unfavorable quarterly reports. Distant, assessing, already planning his exit. Good day, Saoirse. He walked past me into the club. The doors closed with a whisper of leather and old wood. I stood on the sidewalk, surrounded by the kind of silence that money buys. The club where deals were made. The street where problems were solved. The world where men like Aldous Ashcroft never had to lie, because they married women who did it for them. There it was, Hollis, the man I'd loved once, the man who hadn't called since the accusation. He was his father's son. He wasn't orchestrating this, he was just letting it happen, standing aside while his mother did the hard work of destroying me. The Ashcroft men didn't wield the knives. They just married women who would. If I wanted answers, if I wanted to understand whether my husband was complicit or simply absent, I had to confront him myself. Tomorrow. In the house I'd built. In the life I was losing. Face to face. Day 4. 4 days left. I drove to the Ashcroft house at noon, the house I'd lived in for 7 years. The house Tiernan had renovated. The house that was no longer my home. Hollis's car was in the driveway. He was between trips for once. Between escapes. The housekeeper let me in, not Oksana. She'd been conveniently reassigned. And I walked through rooms I'd decorated, past furniture I'd chosen, under light fixtures Tiernan had hung. Memories in every surface. Ghosts in every corner. I found him in his study, the room I'd never been invited into, the room where Ashcroft men made decisions they didn't want witnessed. He was sitting at his desk, light brown hair graying at the temples, pale blue-gray eyes that used to hold mine. Now they looked at me like an appointment he'd forgotten to cancel. Saoirse. Not surprised, not pleased, just acknowledging. Hollis. I stood in the doorway. He didn't stand, didn't offer me a chair, didn't pretend this was a reunion. Do you really believe I cheated on you? He looked away. At the window, at the grounds, at anything that wasn't me. I don't know what to believe anymore. His voice had no pain in it, no anger, no betrayal, just exhaustion. The exhaustion of a man who'd been waiting for a reason to leave and finally found one. Hollis. I stepped closer. Look at me. Look at the photos. You know me. 7 years. Does any of this feel real to you? Long silence. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked. Somewhere outside, a gardener was trimming hedges, the sounds of a life continuing without me. I think, he rubbed his eyes, maybe we should have ended this a long time ago. And there it was. Not denial, not belief, not even the courtesy of pretending to care whether I'd betrayed him. Just relief, barely disguised, that someone else had made the decision for him. You don't believe them. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I moved to his desk, stood over him, made him look at me. You know the evidence is manufactured. You know I didn't sleep with Tiernan. You know your mother paid a witness and doctored photographs. He still wouldn't meet my eyes. You know all of it. And you're letting it happen anyway. Saoirse, you didn't frame me, Hollis. My voice cracked, not from sadness, from understanding. You just didn't fight for me. When they handed you the lie, you held it like a gift. He had no answer. Of course he didn't. Ashcroft men didn't have answers. They had exits. I looked at him, really looked, at the man I'd married, the man I'd loved once, the man who'd been absent for so long that his presence had become a surprise. He wasn't a villain. He was something worse, a coward who let villains work on his behalf. I'm going to fight this. I moved toward the door. I'm going to prove every piece of that evidence is fake. I'm going to keep custody of our daughter. And when I win, and I will win, I'm going to make sure Willa knows exactly what kind of man her father is. He flinched, the first real emotion I'd seen from him. The kind who lets other people do the hard things, the kind who looks away. I left him sitting in his study, in the house I'd built, in the life he was dismantling. The drive back to my apartment felt different, not lighter, but clearer. I was fighting for my daughter now, for my dignity, for the truth. Day 5. 1 day until the hearing. Vivian's office, emergency meeting. Duncan Firth had requested a status conference, legal language for intimidation. He sat across from us at the conference table. Navy three-piece suit, steel-framed glasses, silver tie clip. The manila folder in front of him, the same folder that had started everything, now thick with new documents. "We're prepared to offer one final settlement," he began. That Scottish precision, cold as Edinburgh granite. "The terms are generous, more than generous." "We've declined your terms," Vivian said. Gold hoops catching the light, berry lipstick, battle armor. "My client will see you in court." "A pity." Duncan opened the folder, slid a document across the table. "Then we'll be filing this motion this afternoon." I looked at the paper. Legal language, dense paragraphs. One phrase jumped out. "Motion to depose minor child as material witness." Neither of us moved. "You want to interview my daughter." My voice came out flat, unrecognizable. "Children are perceptive." Duncan's tone didn't change. "Willow was present during Mr. Vega's renovation work. She may have observations relevant to the proceedings." "She's 7 years old." "Old enough to know who was in the house, old enough to describe what she saw." He removed his glasses, polished them, unhurried. "If Mrs. Ashcroft is innocent, surely her daughter will confirm that." "You want a child to testify against her own mother." "We want the truth." Vivian's hand found my arm under the table, a warning. "Stay calm. Don't give them ammunition." But this was Willa. "What exactly would you ask her?" My voice shook. "Whether Mommy had a friend over? Whether the nice man who built her closet ever stayed too late? You want to put her on a stand and make her doubt everything she knows about her own family?" Duncan's expression didn't change. That was the horror of it. He could threaten to weaponize a 7-year-old and feel nothing. "The motion is filed regardless of your objections." He closed the folder. "We'll see you at the hearing." Vivian waited until his footsteps faded. "They won't get it." Her voice was fierce. "No judge is going to let them depose a 7-year-old in a custody dispute. It's a threat, Saoirse, that's all. But they filed it. They filed it to scare you, to make you think about Willa on that stand, to make you consider taking the settlement before—" "I'm not taking the settlement." She looked at me. Really looked. Reading something in my face she hadn't seen before. What changed? I thought about Hollis in his study, about Aldous walking into his club, about Philippa sipping water while demanding my child. I realized they're not going to stop. I stood, moved to the window. The city sprawled below, all those lives, all those families, none of them fighting billion-dollar machines for the right to keep their children. Settlement or not, they'll always want control. They'll always want Willow raised their way. The only thing I can do is win so completely that they have nothing left to threaten. Then we need to win. Vivian gathered her files. Liesel's analysis should be ready by morning. The text subpoena is still pending, but I filed an emergency expedite. Oksana's bank records are contested, but I got the motion on tomorrow's docket. And if none of it's ready in time? Then we go in with what we have. Your testimony. Tiernan's testimony. The inconsistencies we've documented. She met my eyes. And we pray the judge sees through it. One day, 24 hours, everything I had against everything they'd manufactured, my daughter's future on the line. Night. The hearing was in 12 hours. I sat on the floor of my apartment surrounded by documents, evidence analysis, witness lists, timeline reconstructions, Vivian's notes, Liesel's preliminary findings, incomplete but suggesting manipulation. All of it spread across the carpet like the wreckage of a plane crash. The rain had started around 9. By midnight, it was a downpour, the kind that makes the city feel smaller, darker, more alone. I wasn't alone. Tiernan had shown up at 11. I'd stopped asking how he knew when to come, stopped pretending I didn't need him there. He sat on the couch, the opposite end, like always. Charcoal Henley, dark jeans, stubble thicker than before. The burn scar on his forearm, visible where he'd pushed up his sleeves. Neither of us spoke. The rain did the talking. And then something broke. I don't know what triggered it. A paragraph in Vivian's notes about potential outcomes, a number on a page, a single sentence about custodial arrangements in the event of an adverse ruling. I stopped reading, put down the paper, and cried. Not the controlled tears I'd managed for 5 days, not the suppressed grief I'd hidden from Willa. Real crying. The kind you can't control. He crossed the room, sat down beside me on the floor, didn't ask permission, and he held me. I let him. Let myself collapse into his chest, into him. His arms wrapped around me, and I felt the first moment of safety I'd had since Duncan Firth handed me that folder. The crying lasted. I don't know how long. Long enough that the rain slowed. Long enough that my body emptied of everything it had been holding. When I finally lifted my head, his face was inches from mine. Brown eyes. Crow's feet from squinting at blueprints. The scar through his eyebrow, the stubble on his jaw, the mouth I'd wondered about in moments I'd never admitted. The air shifted. I could kiss him. He wouldn't stop me. I could feel it in the stillness of his body, the catch in his breath, the way his eyes dropped to my lips and back up again. I pulled away. Not like this. Saoirse. If I kiss you now, they win. I put space between us, felt the cold immediately. They get to say they were right all along, that the affair was real, that I destroyed my marriage for you. He was quiet, processing. I could see him fighting the urge to argue, to tell me it didn't matter what they said, to close the distance I'd opened. Instead, he nodded. Okay. I'm not saying never. The words came out raw, honest. The most honest I'd been in days. I'm saying, not while I'm still proving I didn't. Not while my daughter's future depends on 12 people believing I'm innocent. He reached out, touched my cheek, wiped the drop of tear with his thumb. Then I'll wait. You might be waiting a while. I built you a house once. The corner of his mouth lifted. The first, almost, smile I'd seen from him in days. I can be patient. He stayed the night, on the couch. I took the bed. Nothing happened. And somehow that was more intimate than anything that could have, because we'd both chosen, together, to wait for a future that wasn't yet ours. The hearing was in 8 hours. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow I would fight for my daughter. Tomorrow I would face the family that wanted to destroy me. Tomorrow, everything would be decided. But tonight, for just a few hours, I wasn't alone. I woke at 5 a.m. Didn't need an alarm. The hearing was in 4 hours. Tiernan was already awake on the couch, sitting in the gray pre-dawn light. He hadn't slept either. I could see it in the shadows under his eyes, the stillness of someone who'd spent the night watching the ceiling. Neither of us spoke. There was nothing left to say. I showered, dressed. Navy wool dress, Vivian's recommendation. Looked like a mother, not a socialite. Low heels, hair down but neat, minimal makeup, the uniform of a woman fighting for her child. Vivian arrived at 6:30. She walked in with a briefcase and a face I couldn't read. Status: She set her bag on the kitchen counter, the same counter where I'd first read the evidence that destroyed my life. Liesel's preliminary analysis is done. She pulled out a folder. She can testify that the Embrace photo has metadata inconsistencies, but she can't definitively prove it's doctored. Not yet. The text records? Emergency expedite came through at 6 a.m. A thin smile, the first hope I'd seen from her in days. I can't stop thinking about yesterday. The full message continues. The way the light hit those herringbone samples. Can we get more? Context. Finally. Proof that my words were butchered. And Oksana's bank records? The smile faded. Still contested. Their lawyers are fighting. I got the motion on this morning's docket. The judge might rule before we start. Might not. 3 pieces of evidence. 1 partial, 1 arrived, 1 uncertain. What are my options? Vivian set down the folder, looked at me the way she'd looked at me that first day. Direct, unflinching, honest. Option A. Accept the settlement. Double the prenup. Lose primary custody. Willa raised by Ashcrofts with visitation. I didn't blink. Option B. Fight with what we have. Go in with partial evidence. Risk losing everything. And option C? Go nuclear. Force the pattern public. Delphine, the payment timeline, the metadata questions. Make it so toxic that the Ashcrofts would rather settle than be exposed. She paused. Risk. If it doesn't work, they'll bury you. 3 doors. No clean exit. I thought about Willa. 7 years old. At a friend's house right now, probably eating cereal and watching cartoons, not knowing that today would decide her entire future. I didn't come this far to give up my daughter. Vivienne nodded. Then we fight with what we have, and we pray. She left to prepare. I stood alone in the kitchen. Not alone. Tiernan crossed the room, stopped in front of me. Dark brown hair pushed back, stubble thick, burn scar visible on his forearm. The man they accused me of loving. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. He reached out, took my hand, held it. His palm was warm, rough from work, solid. The hands that built my house now holding mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. Whatever happens today, he said, I know. I'm not going anywhere. I know that too. I looked at our hands, at the wedding ring I was still wearing, the ring that bound me to a man who'd never fought for me. One day, I'd take it off. One day, I'd know what came next. But today, I had a daughter to save. I squeezed his hand once, let go, and walked toward the door. Family court, fluorescent lights, everything sterile. The room was smaller than I expected. No grand marble, no dramatic columns, just functional wood paneling, uncomfortable chairs, and the flat hum of industrial lighting. Justice stripped of theater. Judge Mariana Delacroix presided from an elevated bench, silver-streaked black hair in a low professional bun, dark brown eyes behind reading glasses on a beaded chain. No jury. This was an emergency custody motion. One woman would decide everything. I sat at the defense table with Vivian, navy dress, back straight, hands folded. Across the aisle, Duncan Firth arranged his exhibits with the precision of a surgeon laying out instruments. Hollis wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. Ashcroft men don't attend the executions. They sent their lawyers. But Philippa was. Second row, cream suit, pearl earrings, the slight smile of a woman who'd done this before and won. Duncan rose. Your Honor, we're here to address an emergency custody motion regarding the minor child, Willa Ashcroft. The evidence we present today demonstrates a clear and sustained pattern of infidelity by the respondent, Saoirse Ashcroft, in violation of the morality clause of her prenuptial agreement. He opened his folder. My folder. The folder that had destroyed my life. Exhibit A, a photograph taken November 14th of this year. Mr. Tiernan Vega leaving the Ashcroft residence at 11:47 p.m. The photo appeared on the courtroom screen. Tiernan's profile. My front door. The timestamp glowing. Real. Context removed. Exhibit B. The respondent and Mr. Vega at a cafe in October. Physical contact observed. My hand on his arm. The scratch on the table I'd been showing him. Intimacy manufactured from a gesture about wood grain. Exhibit C. The embrace. Our faces close, his shoulder meeting mine at that constructed angle. Evidence of a physical relationship sustained over multiple months. I forced myself to breathe. The air tasted like recycled institutional nothing. And finally, text messages between the respondent and Mr. Vega. The words appeared on screen. My words, cropped. I can't stop thinking about yesterday. I need to see you. My husband doesn't know. $1,200 in light fixtures. That was the secret. Brass instead of nickel. And they made it sound like confession. Additionally, we have testimony from Oksana Petrov, who worked in the Ashcroft household during the renovation period. Oksana took the witness stand. I watched her walk, the dark blonde hair pulled back, the gray roots showing, the simple cardigan buttoned to the collar. The woman I'd passed in hallways for 3 years. The woman who'd witnessed my loneliness, my absent husband, my quiet desperation. The woman who'd been paid $50,000 to destroy me. Miss Petrov. Duncan's voice was silk. During your employment, did you observe the nature of the relationship between Mrs. Ashcroft and Mr. Vega? Yes. Her voice was flat, rehearsed. They were together often. Too often. Can you describe what you witnessed? He came to the house many times. Late at night, early morning. I saw them in the bedroom on multiple occasions. She paused. Together. Together. The word hung in the courtroom like an accusation. He was measuring for closet built-ins. I was pointing at the wall. But on paper, in testimony, it looked like everything they wanted it to look like. Duncan closed his folder. This woman violated the morality clause of her prenuptial agreement. She betrayed her husband. She conducted an affair in the home where her 7-year-old daughter sleeps. And now she wants primary custody? He turned to face me, cold gray eyes behind steel glasses. The Ashcroft family respectfully requests emergency transfer of custody. The evidence looked devastating. The photographs, the texts, the witness. I looked at Oksana's face, searched for guilt, shame, any flicker of the truth she was burying. Nothing. She was paid enough not to feel it. Vivian squeezed my arm under the table. Our turn. Vivian stood, gold hoop earrings catching the fluorescent light, emerald blazer sharp as armor, the reading glasses pushed up on her thick, dark hair. She'd forgotten they were there again. Your Honor, the defense will demonstrate that the evidence presented by the Ashcroft family is not only misleading, it is manufactured. Duncan stirred. Objection. Inflammatory characterization. Overruled. Judge Delacroix's voice was even. Proceed, counselor. Vivian walked to the evidence screen. Let's start with the texts. The prosecution presented cropped screenshots, but this morning we received the complete records from the phone carrier. She clicked. The screen changed. I can't stop thinking about yesterday. And now, the rest of the sentence. The way the light hit those herringbone samples. Can we get more options in the walnut tone? The courtroom was silent. Duncan's face didn't change. but I saw his fingers tighten on his pen. Herringbone samples. Vivian's voice was steady. Tile samples for a kitchen renovation, not a confession of infidelity. She clicked again. I need to see you. Full context. The plumber says the pipe replacement needs approval. Can you come by Tuesday? My husband doesn't know, full context, about the upgraded fixtures. I went over budget on the brass. Please don't mention it if he calls about the invoice. $1,200. That was my affair. Brass instead of nickel. Next, the photograph. Vivian gestured to the embrace. We have preliminary analysis from forensic specialist Liesl Brandt. A new face on the screen. Short, silver-streaked dark hair, sharp brown eyes behind black-framed glasses. The clinical precision of German forensic expertise. The embrace photograph shows metadata inconsistencies. The creation date doesn't match the EXIF data. The lighting on Mr. Vega's face originates from a different angle than the lighting on Mrs. Ashcroft. The image was modified after its original capture. Duncan rose. Your Honor, this is preliminary analysis. Ms. Brandt cannot definitively prove. She can testify to inconsistencies, Vivian interrupted. And inconsistencies are reasonable doubt. Judge Delacroix nodded. Continue. Finally, the witness, Vivian's voice hardened. This morning we filed a motion regarding Oksana Petrov's financial records. 2 weeks before her testimony, she received a deposit of $50,000 from Ashcroft LLC. Order! The judge's eyes narrowed. Is this motion on the record? It is, Your Honor. The deposit timeline suggests Ms. Petrov's testimony was purchased. Duncan was on his feet. These are contested financial claims. The deposit is documented. Vivian's voice didn't waver. The timing speaks for itself. I watched the room. The shifting weight of evidence. The cracks forming in the case built to destroy me. And then, the courtroom door opened. I turned. Everyone turned. Delphine Marchetti stood in the entrance. Light brown hair with gray at the temples. The same oversized sweater, hastily changed to a simple gray dress, bought for this, I realized. The gold cross at her throat, the thin arms, the downturned hazel eyes, and the scar on her wrist, visible when she raised her hand to be sworn in. I wasn't subpoenaed, she said. Her voice was stronger than I remembered. I came voluntarily. Vivian stepped aside. Please state your name and your connection to the Ashcroft family. Delphine Marchetti. I was married to Hollis Ashcroft's older brother, 9 years ago. She looked at the judge. They used the same clause, the same accusations, the same methods. The room was silent. Even Duncan didn't move. Delphine turned to me. Our eyes met across the courtroom. 2 women, 9 years apart, caught in the same machine. I told you to take the money. Her voice cracked slightly. I was wrong. Some things are worth fighting for. Vivian looked at the judge. Your Honor, this isn't an isolated incident. This is a pattern. The Ashcroft family has done this before. Manufactured evidence, paid witnesses, invoked morality clauses to strip women of their rights and their children. Saoirse Ashcroft isn't a cheater. She's a target. Judge Delacroix removed her glasses, folded them slowly. Counselors, I've heard enough testimony for now. The court will take a brief recess to review the evidence. We'll reconvene in 1 hour for ruling. The room began to empty. Philippa's face was stone, the slight smile gone. Duncan gathered his papers without looking at anyone. I stayed seated. Couldn't move yet. Delphine walked toward me, stopped at the edge of my table. I spent 9 years regretting that I didn't fight harder. Her eyes were wet. "I couldn't save myself, but maybe I could help save you." I reached out, took her hand, the one with the scar. "Thank you." She nodded once, then walked away, out of the courtroom, back into whatever life she'd built from the ruins of her own. I sat in the silence, waiting. 1 hour until the rest of my life was decided. 1 hour later, the courtroom filled again. Same fluorescent lights, same institutional wood. But something had shifted in the air, a tension that felt closer to ending. Judge Delacroix returned to the bench. Her face was unreadable. I sat with my hands folded, the wedding ring still there. The life it represented already gone. Tiernan was in the gallery. I didn't turn to look, but I felt him there. The man they accused me of loving. The man I might actually love, if I survived long enough to find out. "This court has reviewed the evidence presented by both parties." The judge's voice was measured, even. "The Ashcroft family has presented photographs, text messages, and witness testimony alleging infidelity by the respondent." She paused, removed her glasses. "The defense has presented full text message records that restore context to cropped communications, forensic analysis suggesting image manipulation, and testimony from a previous family member alleging a pattern of manufactured evidence in similar cases." Duncan sat rigid. Philippa's face was stone. "I am not prepared to rule on whether Mrs. Ashcroft committed adultery. That determination would require a full evidentiary hearing with complete forensic analysis, witness examination, and due process." I held my breath. "However, I am prepared to rule on the emergency custody motion before me today. The evidence presented by the Ashcroft family is," she paused, choosing her words, "troubling. Not because of what it shows, but because of what it doesn't." She looked directly at Duncan. "The metadata inconsistencies, the partial text records that reveal context deliberately removed, the timing of financial deposits to a key witness, the testimony from Ms. Marchetti regarding a previous, strikingly similar, case involving the same family. This court finds that the evidence against Mrs. Ashcroft is insufficient to support an emergency transfer of custody. Primary custody remains with the mother. The petitioner's motion is denied." The gavel fell. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The word "denied" echoed in my skull like a bell ringing in an empty cathedral. Willa. I got to keep Willa. Philippa stood. Her face was blank, not angry, not devastated, just calculating. Already planning the next move. She left without looking at me. Duncan gathered his files, nodded once to Vivian, professional acknowledgement of defeat. Then he was gone. Vivian turned to me. That full smile I'd never seen before broke across her face. "We did it." We did it. But even as I said it, I felt the weight of what it cost. The marriage, the reputation, the 6 days of hell. The daughter, who would one day ask, "What happened?" I won, and I was still sitting in ruins. The courtroom emptied. Vivian went to file paperwork. Tiernan waited in the hallway. I sat alone at the defense table. The evidence screens were dark. The folder was closed. The fluorescent lights hummed their institutional nothing. I'd won custody. The morality clause was dead. The prenup sunset would pass in 6 days, and my settlement would become irrevocable. But I was still wearing my wedding ring. I looked at the band. Gold. Simple. The symbol of a promise that was broken before I even knew it was made. Tomorrow, divorce. Rebuilding. Holding my daughter and telling her everything was going to be okay. But today, right now, I sat in the ruins of the life I'd thought I was living, and I let myself feel it. The courtroom emptied. I stayed. Vivian touched my shoulder on her way out, paperwork to file, motions to close. Tiernan caught my eye from the hallway. He nodded once, then waited. I sat at the defense table. The screens were dark. The folder closed. The fluorescent lights hummed their institutional nothing. I should have felt something. Victory, relief, vindication. I felt hollow. The marriage I'd fought for was already dead. The husband I'd defended hadn't defended me. The family I'd married into had tried to take my daughter. Victory, and nothing. "Mommy?" I turned. Willa stood in the doorway, 7 years old, wavy auburn hair in loose braids, gray-green eyes, my eyes. The navy dress with the white collar I'd laid out that morning, not knowing if I'd be dressing her for a goodbye. She ran. I caught her, held her, felt her small arms wrap around my neck like she'd never let go. "Are we going home now?" "Yeah, baby. We're going home." But home wasn't the Ashcroft house anymore. Home was a rented apartment with mismatched furniture, a couch where Tiernan had slept, 2 cold coffee cups on a table. Home was her. Outside the courthouse, the afternoon light was golden. December's sun, weak but present. Hollis's car was already gone. I'd watched him leave without looking at anyone. Philippa had disappeared through a side exit. No photographers, no spectacle. Just a woman holding her daughter on courthouse steps. Vivian found us there. "The prenup sunset passes in 6 days. After that, your settlement is irrevocable." "And the morality clause?" "Dead. They had 1 shot." She almost smiled. "They missed." I looked at Willa, at her tangled braids and her confused eyes and her small hand in mine. They missed. 1 week later. December 24th, my 7th, wedding anniversary. The prenup sunset. I signed the divorce papers that morning. Hollis didn't contest. He was relieved. That was the most damning thing. I met Tiernan at a coffee shop, neutral ground, not my apartment, not anywhere that could be photographed, not anywhere that mattered. He looked different in daylight. Less crisis, more real. Dark brown hair pushed back, stubble neat now, burn scar visible below his rolled sleeves. The same charcoal Henley, the same steady brown eyes. "The settlement's irrevocable," I told him. "They can't touch it." "Good." He didn't ask about the amount. Never had. "Tiernan." I wrapped my hands around my coffee. "I need time." He didn't flinch, didn't argue. The divorce, Willa, myself. I looked at the table, at my hands, at the ring I'd finally taken off that morning, my finger pale where the band had been. I can't jump from one man to another. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not an Ashcroft. "How long?" I don't know. Weeks? Months? I finally met his eyes. "I'm not saying no. I'm saying not yet." He reached across the table, took my hand, the hand without the ring. "I built you a house once." The corner of his mouth lifted, that half smile I'd started to need. "I can be patient." "You might be waiting a while." "I've waited this long." He left first. I watched him go. Knew he'd be back. And for the first time in 6 days, in 7 years, I sat alone in a coffee shop, wearing no ring, owing nothing to anyone. Just me. 3 months later. A public beach. Not the Ashcroft beach house. A stretch of sand anyone could walk. Cheap towels. Willa's swimsuit had a hole in the knee. None of it matched. All of it fit. Tiernan arrived with ice cream, sat beside me. Didn't need to fill the silence. Willa ran up, shell in hand. "Look what I found!" He knelt to see it, turned it in the light. "That's a good one. See the spiral? That means it's old. It survived a lot." Willa looked at me. Those gray-green eyes, my eyes. "Like you?" I couldn't speak for a moment. "Yeah, baby. Like me." She grabbed both our hands. "Come on, the water's warm." She pulled us toward the tide. We let ourselves be pulled. 9 months later. A different courthouse. Not family court. Civil ceremony. Afternoon sun. No photographers. No Ashcrofts. No lawyers. Just us. Willa walked between us, holding both our hands, swinging them. "Are we married now?" Tiernan laughed. "Your mom and I are. You're stuck with both of us." "Good." She swung higher. "I like being stuck." I looked at Tiernan over Willa's head. Didn't say, "I love you." Didn't have to. Mouthed, "Thank you." He mouthed back, "Always." We walked down the courthouse steps. 3 people. A family that wasn't supposed to exist. They manufactured evidence of an affair I never had. They tried to take my daughter. Tried to erase me the way they erased Delphine. They failed. But here's the thing about prophecies. Sometimes the liars see truths they don't understand. I didn't love him when they accused me. I love him now. So were they wrong, or were they just early? I've decided it doesn't matter, because the only signature that counts is the one I chose to give. The marriage they tried to protect was already dead. The family they tried to build, Ashcrofts raising Ashcrofts, will have to find another heir. Willa is ours now, mine and his. The house that testifies against me belongs to someone else. The house where I live, Tiernan built it for us. New walls, new foundation, no clause. This is American Billionaire Tales, where fortune meets fate, and where the only contract that matters is the one you sign freely. If this story stayed with you, if you're still wondering whether she was ever really innocent, then you understand what we do here. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and come back soon, because there are more stories like this one, more impossible choices, more beautiful ruins, more fortunes, more fates, more silk, more ruin.